Hey there guys, how's it going? Reaper here, and I'm back with another painting video. This time around we're doing the Werezombie, which is basically a dead werewolf from the look of it. But we primed it in our standard grey as usual, and strangely enough I'm not actually going to paint the skin on this model until the highlight stage, because the grey is actually quite close to what we want. So I'm actually starting with uniform grey on the hair, because the hair needs to be separate from the skin. And even though it doesn't look that different in the video, by the end of it, it looks completely different. You can clearly see it because the highlights on the skin just make that pop straight back out. Okay, as you can see, it didn't make much of a difference when it's just that base color on the uniform grey as well, but give it time, you'll see. And now we move on to Dirt Splatter, and this is for I want to say skirt, but it's not. It's basically just ripped clothing, but I'm not sure what type of clothing, because there is a belt there as well that you can clearly see, like the pouches on the belt. But anyway, all of his clothing is in Dirt Splatter, and this is the only piece he's got of clothing. And that is it for the clothing. Now on to skeleton bone, and that is for all these weird like bone spikes that are just pouring out of his body. I also do the teeth, and he has what looks like a bone hanging from his belt, so I just do that as well in the bone color, which even if it's not the bone, it does just separate it a little bit and make it stand out a bit more. And variety is always good with minis when it's a big solid color like this. And that was it for the bones. Now we're on to Alien Purple, and this one is sort of whether you want to do it or not. It's in the artwork, like all these bulges are like a purpley color, so I've gone with Alien Purple for that because I wanted to sort of stand out a little bit more. As you can see with this mini, it is very grey, so you need some sort of variety in there, otherwise it's just going to look plain and boring. And when this thing's coming down the street at you in Zombicide, you want it to stand out a bit when it hits you. Now on to Crusted Saw, which is inside of the mouth, and I also use this to do all of the sort of bloody areas, like the insides of his hands and around all these bone spikes, because I do want it to sort of look like he's quite fresh. I do also do the eyes with this color, but I do come back later on and change the color of the eyes because the red just doesn't work. But now we move on to the wash, and I do the same wash over the entire model, and that is dark tone. And to be honest, this is where I started to realize that maybe leaving the primer color on there is not great, because the wash doesn't really work with it. Like with other colors, the wash will sort of stick and slide around a little bit. When it goes onto the primer, it almost like it sort of separates and pulls a little bit, almost like you're putting it on a smooth surface. But the primer is not meant to smooth the area out, which is the problem. And that is it for the wash. I would recommend as well, if you have the big dip tins for the wash, I would use that on this model, because that used up a lot of wash to cover this mini. And although those dip tins take roughly an hour, those dip tins take 24 hours to dry, the wash takes roughly an hour to dry. So it depends how much you want to spend time waiting for this thing to finish. But we'll move on now to the first highlight as well, which is dirt splatter. And this is raised edges, non-recessed areas, the usual we do for highlights. Of course, always keep the recesses in the wash color, just add that depth to the mini. And that is dirt splatter done. Now we're on to skeleton bone, and that is, well, for the bones. And this, I tried to leave the wash around the base of the bones, just to sort of give it a fade almost look, just so it looks a bit more like the ones coming out are more fresher. There we go. So I'll just dot the eyes back in with a more bright color so you can actually see them, because the red was way too dark for it to actually be noticeable, because these things are going to be seen from a good 2-3 feet away while you're playing with them. So you want that contrast to really be there. So you got to sort of take away a lot of the realism, just add high contrast to minis like this, as it just helps with the tabletop view. But now we've moved on to the last highlight, which is ash grey, and this is for all the skin. And this is what's really going to separate the skin from the actual hair. And like I was saying, with this high contrast sort of style, like you can clearly see it now with this. Like the ash grey is very much standing out from the primer with the dark wash, which at a close-up about where the camera is now doesn't look as good, because you can clearly see like a very distinct difference. But at a distance where you're playing and actually with the mini, you can't tell that much. It looks a bit more natural, which is what you really want to go for these sorts of minis. Of course, if you're doing a showpiece, probably not the way you want to go. But then also, if you're doing a showpiece, probably wouldn't be watching these videos, as they're more aimed at the sort of beginner, the basic levels, to get them to look nice on the tabletop to play with, as all these minis are meant to be played with. And now we move on to Crusted Sore, which is basically just touch-ups on the bloody areas that I covered up while I was doing the highlights. So just to go back over and make them look pretty again. And there we go. That is basically it for the mini. I'm doing the basic matte black base now, but I do also come back and add a little bit of effects paint afterwards, which will be the next thing that comes up. But if you don't have the effects paint or don't like the way it looks, this is basically the mini done for you. You can varnish it and get ready to play. And there we go. This is the glistening blood effects, and it looks very messy and very blotchy at this point, but it does dry pretty much clear with a red tinge, so it gives it a nice, it definitely is a gloss look, I know that much, but it doesn't cover as it looks like it does when you put it on, as you can see in the videos. That is it for the end of this video, and hope you enjoy, guys. I'll be back with the next video very soon. Cheers for watching, guys. Like, subscribe if you did enjoy. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.